if you're looking at talking to utilities right now, they're deploying AI at probably the single most important and rapid rate of any sector of the industry. Because utilities have problems with brownouts, they need weather forecasting, they need drones flying over utility areas to see where fire risk is accelerating, they need to see where vegetation has to be cut down. All of this is the picks and shovels of energy demand. And if you ever read anything about the gold rush, if you really wanted to make money long term and keep your wealth, you invested in the picks and shovels of the gold rush. If you wanted to shoot for high risk, high return, short-termism, you went out and tried to find gold. Today, we argue often with our investors and institutions that the picks and shovels to drive a more efficient grid is infinitely more important than the end use cases of the AI. But if I looked at anything as an investor, supporting utility and grid infrastructure for even the AI technology that we're seeing, I believe is the most important. So, if AI isn't going to be the solution or solve the problem, what is going to solve the problem? AI is accelerating our divisiveness in this world faster than social media and cell phones did. They had experiments where they put two AI chatbots in the same chat room, multiple experiments over and over and over again, and every time the two chatbots wound up fighting with each other over some issue that popped up and taking opposite sides of the equation. This is designed to be divisive. I'm sure you've all watched all the movies from Sarah Harris and other things about looking at social media that say it's driving divisiveness, and the algorithms drive our fear and aggression. And we get endorphins from that, and we get hyped up about it. AI will take that trip on steroids. So we all have come to believe, especially people that come to the Nest and come for Climate Week and hear Donald Trump say climate change is a hoax at the UN, that we're in the fight of our lives. And what I can tell you is that that does nothing for progress on climate change. Someone at the end of the day has to stop fighting and start working for progress. And it's incredibly difficult to do, because everything about our self-identity comes with our beliefs and our tribe. And anything that threatens our self-identity and our tribe threatens our ego and feels subconsciously like it's a death threat. So when people are on the opposite sides on climate or calling it a hoax, our natural response is to shove data down their throat, prove why they're wrong, get upset, fight with them. I've worked in Washington the last 4 or 5 years on a group called Generation Climate Alliance, working with Republicans on how to progress bipartisan climate dialogue. You can't fight and win. You have to learn to use different terminology right now. Resilience, security are key words that the Republicans will work with you on if you're focused on that. Water, critical minerals, all of the things that we need for both climate change and AI, dealing with the problems, fall under those categories now if you talk to people in Washington. But more importantly, you have to think about your own evolution as a human being. We're spending more and more time, especially our youth, just downloading data bytes from TikTok and Instagram and all of the different programs and Snapchat. I asked my daughter, who's 18 years old, the other day, I said, why, and this is horrible for a father who's pretty left, I said, why do you listen to all that stuff about conservatism and Trump and anti-liberal? And she said, and I quote, she said, well, I don't look for it. It just shows up on my feed. And I said, okay, that's fair. but do you look for the contrary dialogue to make sure that you're learning both sides so that then you're making an informed decision for yourself about where you want to think about the future? And she said, oh, that's a good point. I'll have to ride her. I don't think she'll walk away from that conversation and just jump into looking at climate change issues and other issues that are more focused on the left. But this is the world that we're living in. Our kids, 1, 2, 3 clicks in, now get then 100 and 1 million feeds on their social media, forcing a belief and an opinion that keeps getting reinforced. And it reinforces their self-worth. And then it pushes them to take additional steps out in the world to reinforce that and get noticed even more. For 5,000 years, there's been spiritual traditions, whether it's Buddhism or Judaism, Christianity, that have talked deeply about meditation, prayer, and silence as the way to explore more of who you are as an individual. AI is a data dump. If we think AI is going to become conscious or self-aware, first we'd have to find some humans that are self-aware to even compare what that self-awareness looks like. There's been no actual definition of consciousness or self-awareness that's been agreed upon by science at this point. And self-awareness happens in silence and in flow. When you look at great beauty, art, music, construction, when you hear people recite poetry that sometimes they're creating on the spot, that doesn't come from deep, focused, current thinking in the moment. It comes from you get out of the way and let something more inspirational and creative flow through you. When you go into nature and experience nature and silence, you feel something differently than when you're walking around New York City hailing cabs, hearing all the noise. We didn't leave nature, we pushed nature away from us. And if we're going to have a relationship with this planet, we need to get back to nature, and we need to spend time in silence away from data feeds that are dumping endless noise into our brains. We are the only solution that can solve this problem. AI is not going to do it for us. Deep fighting about whose side is right isn't going to do it for us. Trust me, the problems will get too great and the sides will have to come together at some point to deal with it. And the people that are able to cross that divide now will start making the most progress for change. We need people that can talk to both sides and not be triggered by what someone else says. When I was young, my father-in-law and my father were as far apart on politics as you could imagine. Far right and far left. At the dinner table, they would fight and argue about different issues that were in the news. After dinner, they would get up and go to the bar and have a beer together and talk about sports and life and all the other things that connect us, and not walk away focused on the one thing that disconnected them. They were able to look past that. We have lost touch with the ability to look past the fact that someone could have a different opinion from us and still appreciate and see their worth. And when we don't see their worth, it triggers something in them to hate. Believe me, there's a lot more to the energy of how you look at another human being than even the words that come out of your mouth. Giving someone your attention and your presence and your silence and actually listening to them crosses all barriers and bridges all gaps. You just have to be truly interested, and the way I do it is I'm deeply fascinated by how someone's come to an opinion that climate change is a hoax. I don't want to hear their data. I want to hear their story. What happened in their life? Who are they listening to the most? What do they feel about the issue? And I will listen to them without trying to contradict them, because I'm not going to change their mind. First of all, you can't change anyone's mind with data. People have been trying for decades. It does not work, because people don't form opinions and beliefs with data. They form opinions and beliefs because of what their tribe believes in, what makes them feel safe, and from stories. If you read *Sapiens*, you know that the human race survived over other races because of our ability to operate and cooperate around shared story. That was the single biggest difference from the other races that were around at the time. We were able to gather in groups of 1,000. The other was only able to gather in groups maximum of 100, because we could come together on shared story. Now, we're coming apart from differing stories. We have to figure out a way to be able to listen to other people's stories and look past their story and see them as a human being and be interested in what they have to say. And you can find cooperation. We're doing it in many different rooms. Conservative Republicans that care about the environment are the easiest people to deal with about getting environmental changes done. There are people who will talk after me doing solar who are not far left. People are doing things because it's the right thing to do and because they care about clean water and clean air. They just don't want to hear you preaching to them about climate change. But if you want to work with them and help get more solar and cleaner water into our Mother Earth, they'll be more than happy to work with you. I started meditating when I was 13 years old. The best thing that you can do is spend 5 minutes every day doing nothing. We live in a world where we've been conned into thinking that if we're not doing something, we're not progressing. Doing something is action, it's rarely progress. Stopping and doing nothing and letting creativity flow through you and come to you, rather than thinking about what you should have done or could do or should do, that internal monologue is never helpful. Find 5 minutes of silence every day where you just let your thoughts flow and you don't jump in with every thought that goes by and create a story about how scary life is or what you should have done differently or why that date didn't call you back. Just 5 minutes, I'm asking, to just sit quietly before you start your day, before you pick up your phone next to your bedside and start scrolling. Get up, sit in your bed for 5 minutes, and just be still and be quiet. If we all start doing that, the solutions that we need will come through us. It's not going to come from AI. AI won't save us. Climate change is a problem that's too big for the mind that created it, as Einstein said. So we need a new mind to create it. I'm trusting that all of you could be that new mind. Thank you very much.
Jeff Gitterman, one smart dude.
I have some books that I wrote in the back left table.
Nice
They're
book.
free. If anyone wants a copy, he's not selling anything here. Enjoy it. It's also on Amazon for a couple of dollars, but there's a bunch of free copies in the back.
Very good.
Copy. Thank you, Britton and Sharon, for having me on the letting me do this morning. Thank you.
Foreseeable future, and we need to be able to demonstrate our progress in a collaborative way across the whole industry. And big problems don't get solved by individual companies or sectors. McDonald's is a very large company. McDonald's cannot solve the challenges of reducing climate change on its own. We really have to do so in collaboration, in partnership with each other, and make sure we're working together in a consistent fashion to be able to have an impact.
Well, I'll pick that up. Yeah, we're a large company. well, we buy a lot of beef, but we only buy about 1% of the world's beef. So there's a lot of beef still out there, and a lot of opportunities to collaborate. And I think most strongly when we're thinking around that on-the-ground delivery of programs, thinking around building resiliency, we don't just want to build resiliency with farms that are in our supply chain. We need to build resiliency for any farm that would like to supply us and our suppliers. And so thinking around this movement from investing just within supply chains, segregating supply chains out, and actually focusing on delivering at a landscape scale, so delivering across watersheds, in water basins, collaborating not just with our beef suppliers, but our chicken suppliers, our potato suppliers, in a particular area across multiple farms, building capacity within those farms and within those ranches, building resiliency, and thinking about how we're delivering multiple benefits, not just in terms of potential carbon reduction, sequestration, climate adaptation, but also water quality and economic resilience and community benefits as well. So it's a complex future, but I feel like investing at that scale, whether that's in the US or whether that is in any other geography, is where the whole movement of this has got to go. We've got to collaborate more, and we've got to drive on the ground action, adaptation, resilience.
So Holtec has a vision of working together to create a planet of plants. And that comes from our CEO, our president. And when we go back to our beginning in the mid-80s, the founder had a principle, and it was called the ACE principle. So everything that we did had to be good for the animal, the consumer, and the environment. And if you go back to the mid-80s, that was not a popular thought. And I think that as we move forward, the collaborations that McDonald's has, that you're talking about, Pete, and all of the supply chain, they are very critical. But fundamentally, I think that one of the big opportunities that we have is as researchers, as companies that are bringing technologies and solutions to bear, is that if we don't kind of remember that ACE principle, and what I mean here is that if it benefits the animal, then it will drive profitability at the farm gate. And the best science in the world, if it has 100% emission reduction, if it does not drive profitability for the farm and doesn't benefit the production system, then the adoption of that technology will never hit scale. So I think one of the key things that we need to do is keep in mind that farms do what farms do best, with or without our involvement. That's why we've seen the change in the U.S. dairy supply. We saw the same thing happen in Canada. We've seen similar results across the globe. What we can do is continue to support that by driving forward, finding solutions that drive profitability for the farm and has that benefit from a sustainability standpoint. And all of these things are the and. It's not one or. And if we can do that, then we will get the adoption. And at the same time, as I said, and again, if we can help accelerate in certain areas across the globe, that truly has the ability to kickstart their productive journey. So it's about that transfer of knowledge and getting into those communities and providing the support to just begin the process. So I think that's one of the real keys for us.
I agree as well. I love that ACE approach, because in this wine industry we say do what's right for people, take your planet. You mentioned animals, consumers, in the environment. So we're always taking that holistic One Health approach. To echo what a lot of folks have already said, it takes collaboration across the barnyard, being science-based, being data-driven. The great thing in the food animal space is there's opportunities to learn from each other. What works for you, what doesn't, right? Different species, different biology at times, but sometimes when we talk about either the technology or the data collection method, there's a lot of similarities that we can learn. And I just want to give a shout out again to the Protein Pack for starting that conversation, bringing together these partners in that space and kind of standardizing even the way that we bring in and share data. And I will mention too, within the swine industry, I didn't say this earlier, we have a sustainability report that we released earlier this year that you can access at porkcares.org. And again, we're always looking for thoughts and input and feedback on how to continuously improve. So as we look for those opportunities, again, sharing learnings across the barnyard, collaborating along the way, getting feedback from our consumers, and remaining science-based and data-driven all the way.
All right, can I add anything else, right? So the underlying theme, I think, is collaboration, right? And we're really, really pleased to have been, especially at the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, learning from each other, learning from each sector. I know as a cattle rancher that comes from a town of 500, it's really important for me to connect with the other people along the value chain and learn from them. Let me just give you one quick perspective from the ranch. And that is that farmers and ranchers may not like the word sustainability, or at least they didn't like the word sustainability. They're starting to become more acclimated to that word because they've always been focused on doing better, right? We always say we want to do better with the land than what we did before. My grandpa always said that do a better job than what he did, right? So that was vitally important, ingrained in us from the very beginning. Farmers and ranchers are taking care of the land, taking care of the animals, and interested in continuous improvement, even if they call it legacy, or heritage, or transition. I'm really proud to be able to have my sons interested in taking over the ranch. That will ensure that we keep like family farms in grass, and we keep that carbon in that soil, providing that health and the ability to percolate water. I mean, it just all goes together. And to me, that's the tremendous opportunity that we've got.
I think that could be a great way to conclude our conversation, but I just want to summarize. Throughout this value chain, there is a lot happening regionally with everybody involved in the supply chain, right? So in different regions across the globe, we're working locally with farmers, with organizations, with retailers, with trade associations to really advance and change practices to support greenhouse gas emissions reduction and protect the planet and improve the health of animals. So thank you all for your contributions today. It's great. Hope you all learned something about how the supply chain is really involved in supporting decarbonization. Thank you.